You're listening to the Minnesota Progressive Repartee, a show about... Wait, repartee? Is that a word? Is that what I was supposed to say? The heck is repartee?
Oh, Mr. Announcer Man, you're about to find out.
All right, you're listening to the Minnesota Progressive Repartee. Whatever. Hosted by Doug Padgett,
That's me,
Brett Johnson, and Hunter Hawes.
I bring greetings from the 45th President of the United States of America, President Donald Trump. The last August...
And that was Vice President Michael Pence speaking in Germany to a security conference just the other day. And, when you're going to address a crowd of dignitaries, you have to pace your speech. So you sort of decide where you think you should put your pauses so your people can have a chance to let an idea soak in or could respond. They had anticipated that spot in the speech, his opening comments, that he brings greetings on behalf of the 45th President of the United States, Donald Trump, was going to elicit some kind of a verbal or auditorial or sound-making response from the people in attendance. And you heard it, just deadpan. And as Brett and I were saying before the show, poor Mike Pence standing up there like some sort of a stand-up comedian for whom the bit is just not working and the crowd is just not laughing. And I don't think Pence has the repartee, one might want to say, to fill the gap. He's a bit of a straight-laced fella. Having been a radio show host in his own career, he plays it pretty straight, that guy. And I think the deafening silence of the dignitaries and other people of security interests that were part of this conference, just sitting there in dead silence, like, yeah, we're not applauding for Donald Trump. Says about all you need to know about the contribution of Donald J. Trump, the 45th President of the United States, to the role and esteem of the presidency.
He needed this line from Jeb Bush.
World. Please clap.
Remember that? Remember when the funniest thing you thought a Republican might do when they kind of misread a crowd is just to say, please clap. Yeah, right. You didn't have any idea that people were just not clapping for Jeb's comments because they thought they were outrageous, would ever be replaced by the fact that people just want to have nothing to do with this president. It's really it's the diminishing. It's the diminishing of the role of the presidency. And here's the thing. Today's President's Day, and I got a whole bit on President's Day, because it's a surprisingly confusing and strangely interesting national holiday that we have. We can talk about that in a second. But I truly believe that what Donald Trump is doing, what Mike Pence is even glad to be part of, is that they're fulfilling this big, strong desire that many of the real right-wing conservatives, and I have friends that are in this category, the real right-wing, small government, uber-libertarian, non-engagement, kind of federalist Republicans really believe that the presidency has been overblown, overexploited, overvalued, over-empowered in the last 100 years, specifically in the last 70 years since the New Deal. And they have been working really hard to limit the role of the presidency. They argue for this all the time. During Obama, this was the Tea Party's primary push, that the presidency has become something far too grand, that Obama is nothing but a grandstander. He uses power that he shouldn't have, and we need to get back to 3 equal branches of the government where the Congress is not the little third brother, the little piggy that can't find his way home, and we need to get Congress back in charge, and we need to, have every war be signed off on by Congress. All of that argument that they've been making, it's part of our Constitution, right? It's a fine argument to make. three equal branches of government, and the executive branch shouldn't be the lead branch. It should just do the executive work, and the congressional branch should do the congressional work, and the court should do the courts thing. That's all fine and dandy. And that set of conservatives have been arguing about these the courts doing too much, the courts being activist judges that are imposing law. That's one of the big pushbacks against not only desegregation, but the pushback about abortion laws is not just on fact of the legality of the law, but judges, courts shouldn't be making the point, right? So there's this crowd of Republicans. This has been their battle cry for 5 decades. What they see in Donald Trump, that crowd, is that every time he diminishes the perceived value of the presidency, that's a good day for them. That's a really good day. So I have a number of friends that hold this position, and I say to them, and in fact, we've had some callers here on the show. We had one last on Friday that asked, what do you think Donald Trump has done that's so bad? And when you say to them, well, he's diminished the value of the presidency, they will say, well, that's a good thing. Why are you acting as if that's a bad thing? That's what we think we need to do. It would be better if a president was just sort of a person that didn't carry all this power, right? So on one side, they're trying to argue that Trump is doing a real service, but at the same time, they don't think that his ineptitude, his lack of standing in the country, his lack of standing around the world is actually harming the United States. So there's this big push. So when people hear that, well, those people around the world, that they don't respect the president, but what they do respect is the country. You'll hear them say this all the time. The standing of America has been reestablished because now people fear, or people respond to, or people do what America says. All this sort of America by strength, not by competency nonsense that the Trump administration supporters say all the time. So here on this very fine President's Day, we are reminded all the way back into, I think it was 1879, that by an act of Congress in 1879, and look, there were a lot of things going on in 1879, right? We surely have a fractured country right now, no doubt about it. We have a country that feels as divided as ever. We have a country that we are reminded of the fact that we are a federation of states, that states are the way we primarily organize our local politics. It's how we organize our national politics. We are organized by states. So even our representatives to the federal government come from our states, our senators and representatives. So we are very states-based. And sometimes in our history, we feel like the national vibe is more of a united, and sometimes the emphasis is on the word states, that we feel like we're much more about the states. We're clearly in a states time. Well, back in 1879, that was one of those times, right? You were a decade and a half out of a civil war where people in this country turned against other persons of this country and killed one another. They established, by an act of Congress, a federal holiday honoring George Washington as the president. And since that time in 1879, now what they didn't do back in 1879 was give it the name President's Day. It was Washington's birthday. Well, Brett, I don't know if you've spent a little time on Wikipedia seeing about how people refer to President's Day. Because when I was growing up, it was called Washington's birthday. I don't know if you have a memory of that Monday you got off of school. We got off on Washington's birthday. And
it was always President's Day when I was in school.
It was. They referred to it as President's Day. Well, you know what's curious? In the state of Minnesota, the state holiday, the thing that makes it a state holiday, is called Washington's and Lincoln's birthday in the state of Minnesota. As it turns out, this is a thing from state to state. After the break, I'll sort of go through the whole list of these. State by state, people call it something different. Some places it's like here, officially in the official documents of the state of Minnesota, it defines what counts as a holiday, and the name is Washington Washington, parenthesis S. So Washington's in the possessive, and Lincoln's birthday. That's the official day. Sometimes President's Day is spelled President's S apostrophe. Sometimes it's President apostrophe S. And sometimes there's no apostrophe at all. And all of these mean something a little different. And in all these different states, it's called different things for different reasons. And it gets even more interesting in some states, and we'll talk about this a little bit after the break, because I think it's it's not only a sort of an interesting fact to me, but it tells us something about the regionality of the United States. That we're telling we tell varied stories for varied reasons in the United States, and the regional colloquialisms have an awful lot to do with how people think about who we are as a country and how we function as a country. So, and this is a little window into that. Well, in Minnesota, we call it Washington's and Lincoln's birthdays. It's not a day in the official languaging of the holiday. It's not an official day for presidents in general. And it's certainly not a day to honor the current president. It's a commemorative birthday celebration for Washington and Lincoln. Well, you can imagine there's some places in the country where what they're not doing is celebrating Lincoln's birthday, right? You get down south and, they're not celebrating Lincoln's birthday. It's actually the Washington shares the commemorative holiday with a different person in Arkansas. We can talk about that here after the break. But it really says something about the fact that for 150 years, 180 years, the country has really tried to say the presidency is something meaningful. And there's a whole crowd of people that since 1879 have been trying to say the presidency is not what it's about, and they couldn't be happier having a buffoon in the presidency, as long as it's a buffoon on their political side of the aisle. This is the Minnesota Progressive Repartee. I'm Doug Padgett. We'll be back here after the break on AM 950, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota.
Hi, Minnesota. It's Tom Hartman, and you're listening to the Minnesota Progressive Repartee on AM 950, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota.
Hearing presidential candidate Andrew Yang reminds me that there's a bunch more people that are going to be running for president. But I don't know if you saw this over the weekend, but I think the mayor of New York is going to be running.
Oh, I'm blanking on his name. I know you're. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He was on talking about the Amazon deal that fell apart in New York. But when he was asked if he's running, he said, "Well, I haven't decided yet. If I'm not, well, you know what? It's the middle of February. If you haven't decided you're not running, got a pretty good chance that you're running. If you're somebody in that kind of a position. So that presidential field is going to get even more crowded, and I can't wait to be talking about that. But today is not a day when we're talking about the future president only. This is President's Day, a day when people are often reminded that there's a good deal on a mattress. I don't know why it is that President's Day is so aligned with like mattress sales.
I was going to say, it's funny you bring that up because Greg Rich, who owns Habitation Furnishing and Design, one of our great sponsors here, he is just driven nuts by how many furniture stores have their store specials on President's Day.
Yeah, it's really something. I've heard something about this from the people that are kind of in that marketing world, and they say it's because it's like the perfect storm of being after the holidays, people anticipating their tax return, and because for so many people it's a day off. That's not a Sunday. So back a while ago, a lot of stores were not open on Sundays, and so Monday sort of became like that was a prime shopping day when people would want to go shopping right in the window, and maybe just coming after Valentine's Day, maybe some of the couples said, "Hey, we tried out that mattress in that whole new way the other day." And, we need a new one. I don't know if it has anything to do with a hangover from Valentine's Day, but I think that'd be kind of a fun notion. All right. So here's the thing. In addition to being days when you can get a great deal on some home furnishings, but I haven't seen those commercials as much lately. I don't know if people aren't doing that like they used to, but you'd always see like George Washington's head on 40% off of a Sealy Posturepedic.
And always the cheesiest voiceovers on those commercials, too. Yeah.
God bless those guys. I mean, just, driving home from work after that day's work when you were the voiceover guy on a President's Day mattress commercial. That's a guy that's just willing to do what you have to do to feed your family. I always respected those guys. All right. So did you know that back in 1968, Congress had to put together a provision in the United States Code called the Uniform Monday Holiday Act? Back in the 60s, they were changing all kinds of things. There were lots of holidays that fell on random days, like President's Day was like on the 12th of February. So it was they were on any given day of the week. So because of, in a lot of ways, pressure and support from the travel industry, Congress passed the Uniform Monday Holiday Act, and they moved a bunch of the holidays onto Mondays and said they're now going to be Monday holidays to give a 3-day weekend. So federal employees and then the trickle-down effect to states that would observe those same holidays. Because as a reminder to the whole point of this on President's Day, one of the things I want to raise is we live in a country that has a federal system, but also a state system. And a lot of us feel ourselves more connected to our state narratives than we do to our federal narrative, especially when the president's not really your kind of person and Congress isn't leaning your way. So all over the country, you have some people that see themselves much more as someone from Ohio or Indiana or Florida or Minnesota or Iowa than they do as a part of the United States, right? Their identity is in their states. So Washington's birthday, Memorial Day, Labor Day, Columbus Day, and Veterans Day were all confirmed by the federal by this federal code that they were going to be on Mondays. And then later, Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday was also put on a Monday. And then Veterans Day, interestingly, was moved off of a Monday in 1978 and returned to its original date of November 11th, which kind of helps me out because last November I was so confused if Veterans Day was the fourth Monday or if it was the day in November. And because it used to be when I was a kid and then moved off of it again. So anyway, even with the Uniform Mondays Act, here's what they did. Well, to give more of to sort of be the counterbalance to the idea that you have federal system telling the states what to do, all over the country, different states declare this federal holiday, which on the federal level is called Washington's birthday. That's the federal holiday. But on the state holiday level, it changes state by state. Some states in their code, in the thing that they describe, not colloquially as like the President's Day mattress sale, but as why do you get to have the day off, the thing that's like the official holiday? In Hawaii, New Mexico, North Dakota, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, Puerto Rico, South Dakota, Texas, Vermont, and Washington, it's called President's Day with S apostrophe. The Day of the Presidents. That's what they call it in those states. But it's President's Day in the possessive, President apostrophe S, in Alaska, Idaho, Maryland, Nebraska, New Hampshire, Tennessee, West Virginia, and Wyoming. With no apostrophe, that's how they describe President's Day in Nevada, New Jersey, and Oregon. And it's called Washington's Birthday / President's Day with an apostrophe S in Maine, and Lincoln / Washington / President's Day S apostrophe in Arizona. I mean, and that's just the people who use the phrase President's Day, all in different ways. It's really fascinating to think about how the country sort of takes a federal notion of a holiday and then does their own version of it. Some places that call it Washington alone include Virginia, Illinois, Iowa, Massachusetts, Michigan, Louisiana, and New York. In those states, it's just Washington's birthday. The ones who combine Washington's birthday with Lincoln's birthday, that includes Colorado, Montana, Ohio, Utah, and the great state of Minnesota. Right here in Minnesota. And ours is the only one that is written as Washington's with the possessive apostrophe S, Washington apostrophe S, and Lincoln apostrophe S birthday in Minnesota. We're the only state that declares it that way. In Alabama,
was Illinois not on the Lincoln thing? You would think that would be the one state.
Good point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, you know why? Because later, Illinois, they have a special day just for Washington. Washington's birthday is a federal holiday, and Abraham Lincoln's birthday is a separate state holiday falling on February 12th in Illinois, Missouri, Connecticut, and California. Like, as it turns out, it is a crazy potpourri of what days people get off. In Alabama, it's called George Washington Thomas Jefferson birthday. In Alabama, they're not giving Lincoln a birthday celebration in Alabama, and in Arkansas, it's George Washington's birthday and Daisy Gatson Bates Day. That's in Arkansas. All right, here's where it gets even more just unbelievably goofy, state to state. I'm going to read this right from Wikipedia because it's just fantastic. In New Mexico, President's Day, at least as a state government paid holiday, is observed on the Friday following Thanksgiving. So in New Mexico, they have a separate state holiday for President's Day, the Friday after Thanksgiving. So they found a workaround for people to have Friday off after Thanksgiving. And then in Georgia, President's Day, at least as a government state paid holiday, is observed on Christmas Eve.
Christmas Eve?
In Georgia, the state holiday for President's Day, separate from Washington's birthday, which is the federal holiday today, they do it on Christmas Eve. And it gets complicated. It's observed on the prior Thursday if Christmas falls on Saturday, and it's observed on the prior Friday if Christmas falls on a Sunday. But if December 24th is a Wednesday, I am not kidding, this is true. If it's a Wednesday, then the holiday is observed on Friday, December 26th, after Christmas.
Does it switch if there's a blood moon as well?
Oh, that's awesome. What if it's a wolf blood moon? Then what do you do? All right, similarly, goes on one more sentence. In Indiana, Washington's birthday is observed on Christmas Eve or the day preceding the weekend if Christmas falls on Saturday or Sunday, while Lincoln's birthday is the day after Thanksgiving. So in Indiana, they get to have this Monday off at the federal level. They're going to declare Washington's birthday on Christmas Eve and Lincoln's birthday on the day after Thanksgiving. I mean, it's just fantastic. We live in this really complicated state. We're trying to figure out what to do with these commemorances and days. I mean, how does anybody keep track when you move to a state like this about what's a holiday and what's not? And if you're taking care of kids and schools are out. And I mean, it's, I just thought every place was like Minnesota. I thought everybody sort of did it our way. We called it Washington's birthday, but turns out it's Washington and Lincoln. And I thought everybody in the country took this one day off for that. Nope. It's a crazy potpourri because we live in a mixed up country. All right, we'll take your calls after the break here on AM 950, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota, on your little afternoon repartee. Hey, welcome back to the repartee here on this lovely sunny afternoon. A little break between the snow. I mean, good grief, Brett. This winter, February, has become winter, like old school winter in Minnesota. It snows every other day. It's going to be the snowiest February in record. Don't let people trick you into thinking that means that there's not global warming happening, by the way. The difference between weather and climate. Like weather is, it's sunny today. It's going to snow tomorrow. Weather. Climate. It's winter. It's going to be cold here. What we know is that the climate is changing. It's getting warmer everywhere on the planet. The planet itself is getting warmer. The weather on any given day, cloudy, rainy, breezier, warmer, colder. So they do impact one another. Climate is like weather over time. So when when we get a super snowy day or a month, there's some people who think, apparently that climate change thing didn't happen. But it's really happening, and there's hardly anything more important than it. I mean, it's really top of the shelf. All right, a little bit on the president because it's President's Day. After declaring a national emergency, President Donald Trump promptly got on Air Force One, went on vacation down to Mar-a-Lago, Florida, and went golfing. Just another sign that the guy will just mock the role of the presidency, right? In one breath, declare a national emergency, and then say, I didn't have to do it, and then goes golfing. I mean, it just leaves everybody else to pull their hair out. It's really something. I'm wondering if any of our listeners went down to the rally today. MoveOn.org, I know, had a rally going on today down outside of Senator Amy Klobuchar and presidential candidate Amy Klobuchar's office. So if you were down there today and you can give us an update on what happened, all over the country there were MoveOn.org organized rallies for people to raise their voices about this wall and just how immoral the wall is. So 952-946-6205. And by the way, just to remember that Donald Trump's argument that we need a wall is an argument that our current work that we've done with securing the border was insufficient, right? That's the primacy of his entire argument. What we've done has not worked. That's the argument, right? We must build a wall. So then when he says, all I'm asking to do is what we've already been doing, what the Democrats already voted for, that's all I'm doing is what we've already been doing, then either his argument that it didn't work is fallacious, or he's actually trying to do something different than what's been done over the last 75 years in securing the border with Mexico. Now, I'm somebody who suggests we should have more points of openness. We should have more expansive ways for people to come into the country. Coming in and out of the country on our southern border should be easier with more flow back and forth. We shouldn't make it cross the line and never go back again kind of a sensibility. We shouldn't make it a prize that you win to get in this country to work. We should change the system totally and entirely so that people can come in and go out and work here sometimes and not work here other times and just find our way as a society that has that kind of a border. But Donald Trump says something different. He says, no, we don't want that. We want to keep it closed. And then what he's doing is he's closing the border not only to people who are coming across non-official border crossing points. He has asked the state of Mexico, the country of Mexico, to imprison asylum seekers who are seeking to come to this country and ask for asylum. It's unbelievable. He's saying that we want you to treat people who are coming in this country to ask for asylum as if they're breaking the law. What Donald Trump is doing with the border, and the whole point of the border wall, is to do something different than we've done before. So don't let people tell you that all he's doing is what we've always been doing and people are just saying no because it's him. If that were the point, he wouldn't have been making a different pitch to have a wall. It's not like he's saying, you know what, President Obama, President Bush, President Clinton, George H.W. Bush, Ronald Reagan, they were doing great. We just got to finish it. I just really feel like what they were doing, I'm here to complete. That's not his argument at all. It's the opposite of that, right? His argument is the opposite of what we've been doing has worked. His argument is what we've been doing does not work. We need to do something different, and the something different is build the wall. So, all right. Hey, David from Shakopee, you have a thought or a question about the border?
Yeah, I just got a question. I mean, we always hear, why we shouldn't, or why we should build a wall, or why we should do this, or but you keep saying that you are in favor of a more open border. So what are the benefits of a more porous border, in your opinion?
Yeah,
I can take that offline.
Yeah, great. Thank you, David. It's a great question. Thanks for asking it. I'm not suggesting more porous borders. I'm suggesting more open immigration. I'm going to start there. Meaning, I'm not saying people should just randomly wander in from one country to the other, right? I think our southern border with Mexico, we kind of have to have points at which you cross and points at which you don't. So I'm not saying porous borders just come and go like we would between states. There's something about one country to another country for a whole variety of reasons that we want to be sure that people are recognized as a citizen or not. So there's a whole lot of reasons why you wouldn't want somebody just wandering in. What I'm saying is what we need to do is make the doorways that we ask people to come through so that we can keep track. We need to make those easier to get through, faster, and not limited at all the way they're limited. Our current immigration numbers are preset to the number of people from each country that the United States will allow to immigrate into the United States. And that number is arbitrarily low and is low for reasons that don't serve the country better. The rationale that I make for why we need to have more people coming into our country, especially those who come in to go to school or go to work or to create make a cultural contribution, is that we have an enormous country. We have all kinds of places in this country that don't have enough people in them, and it would benefit our economy and our cultural diversity to have more people in the country. We would benefit by taking the number that we restrict. It's under 3 million people a year or something that we allow to legally immigrate into the United States, and to triple, quadruple, 10 times that number. Because more people coming into the United States will help us with a declining population, would help us in some of our smaller cities, some of our rural communities especially. And if we believe that the American experience for most people who immigrate into the United States is that they contribute more than they take, and they make the whole country more of itself. They bring out the very best in what it means to be a country that is rooted with immigrants, that we're a country that is founded on land that we took from a native population, that the greatest majority of our people are not actually native to this land. I mean, I was born here, but my ancestors were not. So we all got here in our family tree by some kind of immigration. Almost all of us. We are better off if you buy the argument that making the pie bigger is a good philosophical and economic argument, having more is better than us having less, more education, more income, more contribution, more beauty, more people, I think it's actually a good thing. What's going to hurt this country more than our immigration numbers is our declining birth rates. Declining birth rates are a real problem for anybody looking at any parts of the system of this country. Whether you're looking at governmental dollars, whether you're looking at how we're going to fund our schools, whether you're looking at how we're going to take care of the infrastructure of this country, we need more people. So that's the primary argument. The other is it doesn't do us well to tell a group of people from Mexico that we don't want them to come be part of the economic system here. Just like we don't want to tell that to people from any country. What we want to do is to encourage people to come here. In fact, we have entire bureaus of our government that go out and try to recruit people to come to our country. That's what we need to do. We need to do it more. There needs to be more flow between the countries economically and for social and cultural purposes. All right. Hey, Gary, I know you're on the line. If you can hold, we'll get to you here right after the break on AM 950, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota with Minnesota's Progressive Repartee.
This is Jennifer Ogren, account executive at AM 950, and you're listening to the Minnesota Progressive Repartee?
Oh, it's a repartee today. Speaking of repartees, maybe we'll see Gary, who's going to be on here with us in a second, over on March 2nd at the Blue State Ball. And then, Brett, I heard Thom Hartmann giving that little pitch for joining him for breakfast, for brunch, the day of the Blue State Ball. Are you heading over to the brunch? Are people?
It's actually the day after the Blue State Ball. So
what?
Yeah.
The day after?
Mm-hmm. It is the day after brunch with Thom Hartmann, downtown Irwood Fire Grill.
That's not, wow. Who's going to be in shape for that? What kind of a Blue State Ball is this going to be? Somebody's ready to get up for brunch?
Yeah.
Hey, are you looking forward to the ball? It's coming up a week from Saturday. I mean, it's time to really start taking this seriously.
I know. That is coming up so soon. And by the way, you mentioned Gary. He is most certainly going to be there. You weren't there last year, Doug, but Gary is one heck of a dancer. He might get you out there on the dance floor. Well, he can really. He has the moves.
Well, Gary, I'm going to ask you right now, right live on the radio. Can I be your dance partner on March 2nd at the Blue State Ball?
Yeah, we can have a go at it. I just called about something that really bothered me. That Winkler representative was talking about the problem with funding education fairly.
Yeah.
All this class warfare, the rich and the upper 1% against the rest of us, you know. That's what that upper 1% thing was about when we had that Wall Street thing at Occupy Wall Street. You know, back in the 50s, I was a kid then, and my father was a working man. He says, working people don't pay taxes, you know, regular working people, they educated. they pay very little. You know, we had a small amount of property taxes, no state sales tax in this state till 67. He said the rich got all the money in the country, just like Willie Hutton said. I robbed the banks because that's where the money is. And this is what it is ever since Rotten Ronnie, tax breaks to the rich. When they get tax breaks to the rich, that's warfare against the rest of the people of the country. And they shifted the burden on us, and we can't afford to pay it all. So the roads fall apart, the schools fall apart, there's kids that want to get ahead. I got a doctor that's $200,000 or $300,000 in debt, and she's 48 years old to be a doctor. I mean, that's what they've done to this country. They just shredded the middle class and the working class.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. Keep up that fiery energy for a week from Saturday when we get that dance together. But I think you're saying something really helpful and important, especially on any day that we're having to remember the impact of a president. Presidents build walls, and they're also they sign legislation. And this experiment that a certain conservative view has had for 50 years in this country, there's been a strong argument of the conservatives that say, if you get government out of the way and if you let people keep their own money, what they will do is grow the economy, and with a lower tax rate on a higher dollar amount, in other words, the economy gets bigger, the lower the rate could produce more money. So in other words, 5% of $1 million is better than 20% of $10,000, right? So their theory is lower the rates and that will expand the economy. That's a philosophy. A reasonable person could say to themselves, oh, that seems like that could work. Maybe we should try that. Maybe we should see that if we lower the tax burden by lowering the rate, that will grow the economy and we'll end up with actually more, because a larger amount of money in the economy that's being taxed at a lower rate produces more revenue. It's a great idea. We should try that. So for 50 friggin' years, we've been trying that. It doesn't work, right? The economy has grown like crazy, and things that Gary brings up and that Representative Ryan Winkler brings up remind us there's still not money for the things we want the money to go to, right? It has not worked that if we just simply expand. Now, the federal government is spending more money. That's true, but not based on inflation rates. You start looking at inflation rates and you don't see the kind of increase that we need. There are just places where we have to spend more money. And in my view, it's not the military, which seems to be an endless pot. I mean, you talk to a lot of conservatives and they will tell you, well, you got to make sure you fully fund the military. Well, why do you have to fully fund it? Because if you don't fully fund the military, then the military can't do what it needs to do, and that is protect us. But when an educator says the same thing, you have to fully fund the education system, they say, well, can't you make do? Can't you squeeze a little more out? Can't you just go longer day? I mean, it's unbelievable. We know it's true that some things have to be funded fully. And in this case, we should be funding fully infrastructure in this country and education. Just no doubt about it. We should be funding kids in schools and teachers in schools and people through college and actually people in adulthood. We should make that a priority in the country so the funding for that kind of thing keeps on going. It's just the idea that people have to argue for this, or for the love of it all, that is connected to property taxes, which was the one thing I thought that Jesse Ventura did that I could cheer up. And that was to try to deconnect the funding of schools from their property tax addresses. It's ridiculous. If you want to use property taxes, then spread it equally across the country and across the state and raise the amount that we're taking in so that there's enough money for, like, every school budget should finish the year with $1 left. They did everything they needed to do and there was $1 left. We got that close. We overspent by $1. Instead, people are underspending. They're coming up with bake sales and with referenda and with gimmicky tries to try to make their way through. And in some parts of our society, in some parts of our city, that works. In some parts, it doesn't. All right, let's try Phil in Golden Valley. Hey, Phil. Hey, Phil. Doug here.
This theory about reducing tax on rich people because, they'll make more money and there will be a bigger amount of money for the tax to come out of later.
Yeah.
It's sort of like the theory of lose a little on each job and make up for it in volume.
That's perfect illustration.
I mean, the thing is, we've tried this crap ever since Reagan, the so-called trickle-down theory, and all that trickles down is baloney, pardon my French.
I think
you know
we're
what
good French
I mean?
baloney right now.
There's coarser ways of saying it. Don't do what you're doing and claim it's raining.
Yeah. Hey, and you know who dubbed the phrase trickle-down economics? It was a derogatory term George H.W. Bush used against Reagan when he was running against him in 1979 for the nomination in 1980. So even inside the Republican Party, there were people saying that's voodoo economics called trickle-down economy. It doesn't work. It never has worked. There's been long ongoing arguments in this country that date back to President's Day and all the way through to current tax policies. You stay in the fight because you got to stay in the fight from top to bottom. Hey, this is Doug Padgett. Thanks for listening to the Minnesota Progressive Repartee on AM 950, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota.